who are the absolute best in their respective sectors and domains. And it's an honor to have this privileged panel among us for today. Before I call on these honorable panel members, I would like to highlight few points this eminent panel would be discussing in front of all of you. Doing the right thing, the food safety, trust and transparency, changing the consumers' tastes and preferences, food safety transformation in India, and many more. So now, ladies and gentlemen, I want all of you to help me welcome this eminent panel of experts with the biggest round of applause. We'll begin with Mr. Manish Singh, Quality, Regulatory and Compliance Advisor to Fonterra, Southeast Asia, Fonterra Future Dairy. A big round of applause to Manish ji. Manish ji, welcome to the panel. Always a pleasure to have you. Request you to, sir, kindly take the stage. Joining next in the panel, we have Mr. Radhey Dixit, Chairman and Managing Director of Ananda Dairy. A big round of applause to Radhey ji. Radhey ji, thank you so much for giving us time, and you're more than welcome in this panel session. Great to always have you. Joining next, we have Mr. Karan Singh, Director, Rattan Organics Food. A big round of applause to Karan ji. Karan ji, welcome to the panel. An honor to have you. Joining next, ladies and gentlemen, we have Mr. Vishal Rastogi, Director, Happy Nature. A big round of applause to Vishal ji. Vishal ji, welcome to the panel. Pleasure having you. Joining next, ladies and gentlemen, we have Mr. Navneet Mehta, Global Quality Director, Food and Refreshment, Unilever. A big round of applause to Navneet ji. Navneet ji, welcome to the panel. And now, I would like to call on stage the honorable moderator for this panel, Mr. Dharmendera Bhalla, Chief Executive Officer of Govind Milk and Milk Products. A big round of applause to Dharmendera ji. Dharmendera ji, welcome to the panel. Always an honor having you. So, such an eminent panel of champions here. Dharmendera ji, all over to you. Looking for a cracking session ahead.
Good afternoon. Setting up the context, resilient, efficient, and sustainable. These are the few words that will start the session. Why resilient? First thing, see, COVID has shown us how supply chain can be disrupted. There are many other things also. For example, war has also shown us the disintegrity of material available in the food industry and in the other electronic industry also. Now, to be efficient and sustainable, what I believe is the total supply chain starting from the source up to the consumer has to be totally efficient and sustainable. When I say I can make my industry sustainable or manufacturing unit, but then if the farmer is not sustainable, he'll check out from the industry, and then you are not left with the raw materials. So I believe that good quality milk and sustainable quantity of milk can be obtained from the farmers, and you can't produce it in the factory as such. Now, we at Govind Milk do a business like that. We involve the farmers along with us. We are promoting, say, free housing farms, where the animals are stress-free. They can eat and drink at their own will. And this reduction of stress on the animal gives a better quality of milk, more quality of milk, and thus making the farmer more sustainable. Similarly, things like the fodder management, we believe that if a small farmer is there, he can make it in hydroponics also. And the hydroponics we promote are very low-cost solutions also, and not a very high-cost solution, so that the farmers, they adopt to the technology and become more sustainable. I'm passing on to Mr. Navneet, who will talk about what have been the challenges, unique challenges in the food industry, and how do we see it in the period of time in the last 15, 20 years and the near future.
So, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks again to the audience for this session. My primary purpose of next 3 to 4 minutes will be to touch upon what is transforming in the food industry from the mass consumer-based perspective over last 20 years. As I have seen things evolving, not only in India, but globally. And I'll touch upon 3 topics, or three touch points. One is how technology has led to a situation where we can trace anything and everything, both information and material. That is one. Second is how pandemic, and then of course post-pandemic, the e-commerce has impacted all of us in terms of consumer behavior, and the challenge to the food industry. And third is the obligation, the imperative obligation which has now come upon food industry to actually focus on being environmental friendly and focus on more sustainability. So let me start with the first one. I don't know if you would have ever read about it, but this was a big news early this year. When I say early this year, February and March in Europe. And since I have been handling that territory, this news was very, very close to what we were operating with. The two set of news were related to, one was related to Ferrero, the chocolate manufacturing, one of the biggest chocolate manufacturers in the world. And second was related to Nestle. Now, both of these are well-reputed, globally recognized organizations which follow the best of the food safety practices. And yet, what happened? Nestle, what happened? Nestle has a brand which is called Buitoni. I'll refer to some notes because there are some very interesting details. And this brand is actually in the frozen pizza. So you can buy the frozen pizza and then you can make your pizza at home. That is what it is into. And there is a complaint in France that a lot of children are infected by E. coli and severely having ill effects. And over a period of 2 months, it was detected that this E. coli was getting traced back to this particular frozen pizza, which is manufactured by a factory of Nestle. And this is something in public domain. If you Google, you will find this out. Now, what is interesting about it? How could the authorities in France, in collaboration with the other authorities in European Union, could trace what children have been eating in different parts of not only France, but other countries around, and trace it back to this particular frozen pizza, this particular batch of frozen pizza. And what they used was a very path-breaking new technology, which is the whole genome tracing system, where the actual DNA of the E. coli was found identical in the frozen pizza and in the children who were affected with this ill health. And on the basis of that, this traceability had been established. So this is what happened with the frozen pizzas. Now let us come to the other example of Ferrero. In Ferrero, there is a particular ice cream which was infected by salmonella. Sorry, I stand corrected, not ice cream, chocolate. So in chocolate, this particular salmonella infestation led to a lot of people falling ill, and it was detected and it was traced back to the salmonella contamination. But the interesting part was that while the company was able to trace the batches, recall the batches effectively, but the after effects of this Ferrero felt in USA, in Canada, and so much so that even Brazil authorities banned import of Ferrero products for that point of time. So what are the two insights which come out of this? One is that information flow is so rapid and so fast that as food industry and as food manufacturers and marketeers, we have to be really wary of what happens in one part of the world. Even if it is not affecting physically the other part of the world, the information flow really disrupts the business cycle. So that is something which we have to be aware of. That is something which was not heard of 20 years back. From the previous example, what comes out is that modern technologies of genome sequencing, etc., are leading to a fact that traceability has become so intricate that food safety becomes even more paramount than what it used to be earlier. So that is our insight number one. The second insight is that as consumers, as we are getting more and more used to picking up the product sitting right at our home, it becomes all the more imperative that e-commerce is something which we will have to get adapted to and used to as food manufacturers and marketeers. Coming to the third point. The third point is about that and this year we had this session we were witnessing on the TV about global climate change and the impact of sustainability and the actions which have to be taken. Now this is something which is impacting food industry as well. More and more consumers, more and more government organizations are having expectations from the food industry to demonstrate greater affiliation to actions and efforts towards sustainability. I'll pick up one interesting article which had come up, and again I'll refer to my notes because this is a very intricate article. The article was published early this year in an environment journal called Live Kindly. And if you just Google Live Kindly, you will find this out. And the article is, what would happen if everyone on the planet stopped eating meat? Okay, this is a hypothetical article. Of course, I'm not advocating that everybody should stop eating meat, but it is giving us imaginary situation that if everybody stops eating meat, what will happen? And what comes out is that the global carbon footprint or impact of global carbon footprint will come down by 70%. That is, and this is something which is well researched. So the article is, I was trying to figure out the article has backups or not. The article is well researched, that is one impact of this. The second impact is that the water sustainability, which is becoming a big talk across globally, more so in India, because India is a water-stressed country. What is coming out is that one interesting insight this article throws up. Meat-based diet has an impact which is 14 times more than any plant-based diet. So if you're taking, let us say, a simple vegetable grown and pick up from the market, or you take an equivalent amount of meat, whether it's chicken or something, the water which would have been consumed in preparing that meat product will be 14 times more. So these are the two insights which shows that the obligation of sustainability on food industry is becoming more and more. So consumers are now looking for not only food which is actually healthy and more nutritive, consumers are also going to look for food which is coming from sources which are more environmental friendly. And this is something we will all have to gear up for. Thank you.
Thank you, Navneet. Let's see, we have, Navneet has told how technology has evolved, and we can even trace back the DNAs. And that makes us more to see that the products that we make are compliant to the and more consumer friendly. We have to think of their health before we do anything else. Now I'll take it to Mr. Karan. He'll be talking on the trust and transparency and sustainability on the food safety aspects of the food. Yeah.
Thank you, Bhalla ji. Good afternoon, everyone. I think जो topic मेरे को मिला है वो है food safety, trust and traceability about. I think नवनीत जी ने अभी अपने इसमें previous thought पे in fact कहीं ना कहीं वो hidden एक message भी दिया. And that was very clear. It's like a responsibility for all the manufacturers basically जो manufacturing कर रहे हैं खासकर से food को. Because आपने name लिया in fact Nestle, the brand जिनके ऊपर हम लोग trust कर सकते हैं. And somewhat उनसे ऐसा expect नहीं किया जा सकता है, especially on those areas. तो trust is the most important for, I think, for every consumers उनके लिए, because कि वो कहाँ से आ रहा है, product कौन manufacturer, and I think manufacturers is the most responsible for all the all the things which are, you know, food को ले, यदि हम खासकर से बात करें food को लेकर के, वहाँ पर किसी भी तरह का adulteration और किसी भी तरह का is not acceptable. It's like a responsible for all the manufacturers. जो भी food business में है, it's a responsible business rather than just a although it's a money making idea के जैसा देखा जाता है, but I think it's a more responsible business than any other business in around the world. जहाँ पर हम लोग सब चीज़ कंज्यूम कर रहे हैं, डायरेक्ट कंज्यूम कर रहे हैं, हमारी बॉडी में ऑलमोस्ट लाइक 37.2 ट्रिलियन सेल्स हैं, उनको वो न्यूट्रिशन मिलना है, उनको वो माइक्रो न्यूट्रिएंट्स की ज़रूरत है, नॉट टू आवर टंग. तो टंग से इम्पॉर्टेंट पार्ट है कि उन न्यूट्रिएंट्स जितने भी आपके सेल्स हैं, उन सेल्स को यदि प्रॉपर न्यूट्रिएंट्स मिलेंगे और वो यदि फूड 100% प्योरेस्ट फॉर्म एंड अनएडल्टरेटेड फॉर्म में होगा तो ही आपको वो न्यूट्रिएंट्स प्रोवाइड होंगे. So I think trust factor is the most important, sir, in all this, and the traceability part in this term of कि product जहाँ जिस भी manufacturer से आ रहा है, क्या उसका जो पूरा process backward integration process है, strong है नहीं है, या either केवल most of the company nowadays are the marketing companies. I can say that very easily. You can see this in the market. बहुत ही कम companies हैं जो manufacturing कर रही हैं, और जहाँ manufacturing की बात आती है वहीं पर एक वो proper trust. If you are manufacturing the good quality product, yes, you know that what kind of quality product you are manufacturing. As well as backward integration यदि part strong है किसी भी company का, और उसमें जैसे most of the milk industry, सबका backward integration very strong है. Like they collect the milk from the different resource and all, as well as in the food part also. Backward integration is most important for any industry कि आपका raw material अच्छा होना चाहिए. If your raw material is good enough, I think your end produce and product will be much more nutritive values than anything else. So like well said, in terms of making the trust, you need to be the manufacturer's responsibility. It is all about the manufacturer's responsibility to give the good quality product to the customers.
Mr. Karan, you are, I believe, making organic products.
Yes. So I'll.
The nutrition part of it is important.
Yeah, very good question. I think the best part in our organization or in our company that we owns our own farm. Like we grow most of the things by ourselves. So raw material control बहुत strong है हम लोग का. Last 14 years we are into this industry itself, and we launched our brand in 2015 and 16. But cultivation हमारा बहुत strong background पीछे से कि cultivation हम लोगों ने किया. We know the science of Ayurveda, we know the science of organic cultivation. We practice about this in our farm and then make the raw material available for the many buyers. And then we launch our own brand. The best part when we launch this, that we are having the experience of handling the things in a different way. Organically पूरा grow किया. The nutrient values in organic produce is much higher than compared to the conventionally grown, which is laden with the high chemical and pesticide. But at the same time, प्रोडक्शन भी एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट, मैन्युफैक्चरिंग एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रोल प्ले करता है. व्हेन वी से कि वो 100% किसी भी तरीके से वहाँ पर जो प्रोसेस है उसको मैन्युफैक्चरिंग, रॉ मटेरियल हैंडलिंग से लेकर के एंड प्रोडक्ट को पैक करके देने तक का जो प्रोसेस है, वहाँ पे किसी भी तरह का कोई एडल्ट्रेशन इज़ नॉट एक्सेप्टेबल. एंड दैट्स व्हाट वी डू फॉलो इन आवर ओन मैन्युफैक्चरिंग प्रैक्टिस. वी नेवर लाइक रॉ मटेरियल जब आपका अच्छा है एंड उसके बाद जब आपने प्रैक्टिस उसकी एक जेन्युइन तरीके से करी, तो आई थिंक वो 100% प्योर बेस ऑफ प्रोडक्ट निकलेगा.
Thank you, Karan. Now, Mr. Vishal, what do you think of transparency and traceability?
Thank you, Mr. Bhalla. I will probably put a perspective which is slightly different in terms of the stalwarts from the industry that are sitting here, because I am coming from a startup background. We are still very small, and from a traceability point of view, as covered by Mr. Navneet and Karan ji, I think so that's going to be a very, very important aspect of any business, any food business going forward. When we talk about the traceability, not only has to go back to the manufacturing unit from where the product was produced, and the example given of how the DNA was compared to reach to a point where it could be identified the responsible batch or the responsible manufacturing unit for that perspective. What will also be important and going forward that's also happening in the industry is how we can trace back the food directly to the farm or to the place from where it actually started its journey. And technology is playing a very, very important role in that. We have all heard about blockchain. Blockchain is something which is being used in the banking segment very, very effectively when we talk about crypto. Same technology is now being introduced in terms of traceability from farm to table. Yes, it's still a very early state of its presence, but there are work which is being done. But for this, the scale obviously has to be reduced because the batch sizes has to come down for making a traceability possible to a farm level or to a, even a BMC level when we talk about a milk unit. So that was one part of it which I just thought it would be in continuation with the discussion on traceability, which is happening in the industry, and there are a number of startups which are actually working in this direction. The other point I wanted to talk more about was from the awareness point of view. Post-COVID, I think so, a lot of awareness has come on what we actually consume as a consumer, especially when it comes to food. But I think so that awareness level still is not to the level where we all can understand what is inside the product. I'm sure if I do a survey here, very few people would actually be looking at the label behind the bottle of any product to understand what is inside it. There could be preservatives, there could be chemical agents which are required to do a certain part of processing, like there could be artificial colors, and normally they are coded by a number, E11, E7 or something like that. The awareness to that extent is still missing. We still probably don't look at how much sugar is there. There are people who are now helping us educate how do we read these labels. FSSI doing a lot of good work in terms of bringing the traffic light system so that on the front of the product itself, you can know whether the product has high energy in terms of calories, or it has high amount of sugars or anything which can help you to decide. Obviously, the decision belongs to you because you want to eat a product, and we were talking about it while we were discussing it. If you want to have a gulab jamun, yes, it has high sugar. You would probably still want to have it. But now you are well informed about it, that yes, it has got a certain degree of health, which could be your choice to do or not to do. So that was one part of it. So I think so more awareness is needed to understand what is inside rather than what is we as a marketing companies or we as a product making companies are putting on the label. We may say low sugar, but you look at the back and you'll find that it's actually not low sugar. So we as a consumer needs to also start to understand these aspects, because at the end, all of these aspects in a way is related to health of your own health and your family's health. So I just thought the awareness and the traceability are the two very important aspects. FSSI is really working on both of these sides, and I think so we are in a good position as we move forward to get, if someone has written on organic certification, how genuine that organic certification is. There would be a complete traceability back to the farm from where that produce has come. Right now, the trust in someone who is writing an organic certification is very, very low. And I think so, Karanji would probably be a better person to probably elaborate on that. But I think so, as a consumer, we don't trust it. That trust has to come, and that's where the complete traceability will help us in establishing that trust.
Thank you, Vishal. When you said awareness has to be there, we see, for example, lactose-free milk. We think it's sugar-free, but then lactose is converted into something else, which is again a sugar.
Yeah.
So customer has to be aware on what he is taking before the product is consumed. And now I take it to Mr. Manish, a very good friend of mine, and he'll talk about the changing consumer behaviors and the demands of the customer. Thank you.
Thank you, Balaji. A very warm welcome, all of you. Good afternoon. So broadly, two areas that I would want to touch. One, like Balaji said, the changing consumer perceptions, what are some of the trends? And then linked to that, how do we play a responsible role to ensure that that trend continues in the right manner as we go forward. Now coming to the consumer trends and the changing perceptions and evolution of the category on the whole, There are a lot of things that a lot of people can talk about to you, but then I think three things that I would want to focus on. One is the globalization of taste. That's the way I would want to put it. So people are becoming more experimentative with food. You see that in terms of the kind of restaurants which keep coming up. So you've always had those Chinese and Thais, but then you do see Indonesian, you do see Moroccan, you do see Sri Lankan. So you see many more global cuisines coming into India, and the business is doing really well. Not just that, but then we are experimenting with food in home as well. Now COVID has, to a large extent, driven that, but then people are happy experimenting food, making it at home, as a family, this thing as well. And you do see the change where a lot of fridges now start having things like a whipping cream on a regular basis. They'll have specialized sauces, for example, which are now becoming a common mainstay in the fridge as well. So I think for me that's one big trend which will ensure that this category, the food industry, continues to grow in times to come. The second big one for me is the whole health aspect of food. Now, we've been talking about how food should be healthy, how we can make it healthier, etc. for a very, very long time. But I guess I would want to stretch that argument to say that the whole personalization of food to deliver a certain health benefit for you as an individual, I think that's going to be something that a lot of companies have started to focus on, and that's something which you will see more as we go forward. Having said that, health and taste will have to kind of coexist. So if you want to make a product which is healthy, ensure that it's tasty, to ensure it's kind of assimilated by everybody all across. So those are the two big ones that I thought I would probably focus on. The third one that is interesting for me to see is how, now Navneet spoke about how the information around safety, quality, etc. kind of percolates across the globe very soon. But we are also, as a society, now starting to embrace global trends sooner rather than later. An example I would want to put here is the color of next year is Viva Magenta, and the flavor of next year is dragon fruit. Recently announced, but then if you do talk to the flavor houses and some of the manufacturers who do colors, they will tell you that some of the manufacturers have started talking about these kind of flavors and colors which they want to start using in their products and then quickly get into the market, which means that the manufacturers do see that in embracing of these early trends in the consumers as well, which I think bodes well for us as an industry. And these are, to me, some of the indicators which will ensure that the food industry is an exciting space to be in, even in times to come. The second part of that is, while this growth will continue and the category will evolve, the industry will evolve, how do we ensure that we are playing our role as a responsible manufacturer? Now, I was attending a meeting with Invest India a couple of weeks ago, and they put up a data to say India has about 80,000 startups as we speak, across categories, but then food is also a big part of that startup culture. I think that's a very, very good positive sign. But the question that I would want to put here is, as the startups keep coming up, and a typical language in startup is the minimum viable proposition. So try and make a product, take it to the consumer, see how it is accepted, and then scale it up. But then who defines that minimum? I mean, what are the things that we still need to ensure that as manufacturers we are not compromising on? So we can have a discussion on this, but I think that's one thought I would want to leave on the table. The second one, which is more important for me, is as we kind of stretch the boundary of what food is or what food can be, how are we ensuring that we are providing the right information to the consumer and not just riding a wave? I mean, an example I would want to give is the whole plant-based milk. Now, we've had oat milk, we've had almond milk, and everything is being classified as milk. But we know that, comparing that to a dairy milk is no comparison at all. Now, yes, there have been discussions around how do we ensure that we can control it from a legal perspective, but stretch it to the other scenario where we are now talking about plant-based meat alternatives, for example. Now, one of the most talked about product is plant-based egg. Now, trying to compare that with a normal natural egg, which is supposed to be the best quality protein, would a plant-based egg be able to deliver on that? The answer is no, not at least now. Of course, a lot of work needs to be done around it. But then how do we ensure that as we stretch the boundaries, which is the right thing to do, as manufacturers, we are ensuring that we're giving the right information to the consumer as well, to then ensure that they can take the right decision for themselves. So I think those are some of the thoughts that I thought we'll leave to the panel and to the audience.
Thank you, Manish, for showing us the future trends and what we have the challenges in the future also. I'll take the discussion to Radheshyamji. He'll be telling us about the digitization, what he has done from cow to consumer for a more sustainable.
Thank you, Balaji. Actually, digitalization is now the need of the time, because at every house, each person knows the importance of digitalization, like what Amazon have changed our life. Anyone can just book his, you can say, requirement on the phone, and delivery will reach on time. And next level, this Blinkit and lot of new startups has entered in the life, and just like Ola and Uber has changed the life. So in our industry, food also, we think like that, why can't we think from cow to consumer, we should do for 100% digitalization. In our company, Ananda, we have taken the challenge. As Navneet ji also said, very furious thing, what happened in food, in frozen pizza. It's a really coming challenge in coming time. That traceability will be like that if anybody can eat anything, and doctors can trace out that this disease has came out from this food. So then food company will be in big trouble, and any consumer can put a case. So, and on other thing is this digital media, there's a lot of things are there. So anybody can put a you can just a news and you can say Twitter, Instagram, lot of platforms are there. So what we have taken challenge, so we are putting 25 apps nowadays in our company, and all apps are connected to SAP S/4HANA. And in our team, everybody is working on mobile only. Nothing is allowed to work on paper. So being a private company, it's really tough to think, but we have thought not to work in cash, nor a single rupee payment in cash. So it's tough to, you can so just think, doing is really more tough, but we survive doing this business, a dairy in India, no transaction in cash, in totally giving and taking. We are thinking our India will be from developing to developed country in coming years. So we have to be prepared in a quite, you can say, refined manner to go with this developed India. So this one factor, digitalization, will really help us to go there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Radheshyamji. See, milk has been most adulterated product earlier. But then now with the technology, we have been able to trace all the things. And
Sir, I defer your statement. जब से सृष्टि शुरू हुई है, तब से देवता और राक्षस साथ ही रहते हैं, और जब तक सृष्टि रहेगी, तब तक देवता और राक्षस साथ ही रहेंगे. This adulteration word you cannot put only on milk. It is always everywhere, even in your mind. We are having adulteration in our mind also, in our thought process. So we have to take care that digitalization will really help for, and the traceability is one more thing. So we have to be very much careful that how we want to build our India. If you want to think that our India will be the top #1 economy of the world, so we have to be get prepared for that.
Thank you, antibiotics are there in the milk. Again, we have to work with the farmers. We at Govind, for example, are doing EVM and even homeopathic treatments to avoid antibiotics in the milk. This gives a better and good quality milk. Again, we do biological controls. For example, if we have the poultry along with the cows, they pick up the ticks of the cow, and then you don't require the pesticides to remove them. So this makes the business more sustainable for the farmer, and we do have other aspects like biogas production from cow dung, fertilizer from the cow dung, and we have cases in our area that the cost of milk production to a farmer is even less than 70 rupees if we do all the sustainable things. With this, I thank the panel and some of the thank you. You can ask any questions if you want. And anybody, just raise your hand. No question. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Honorable panel members, can I ask you to kindly be on stage? And please do take your seats. We can take some questions from the audience if the honorable moderator suggests. Can we take some questions from the audience? Because I'm sure they will have a lot of questions from a panel like this. So ladies and gentlemen, we can have the floor open for questions for 5 minutes. I would request you to kindly raise your hand if you have the question, and please keep it brief and precise, and please do mention the name of the panel member with whom you want the question. So any questions from the audience? All right, can we have a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for this wonderful panel of CXOs here on the next generation of F&B industry, resilient, efficient, and sustainable. I would now like to call on stage Mr. Arvind Kakru from Rockwell Automation to kindly do the honors of felicitating this eminent panel here. Arvindji, thank you so much for doing the felicitation. We'll start with Mr. Manish Singh, Quality and Regulatory and Compliance Advisor, Fonterra, Southeast Asia, Fonterra Future Area. Big round of applause to Manishji for his wonderful contribution in the panel session. Mr. Radhey Shyam Dixit, Chairman and Managing Director, Ananda Dairy. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause to Radhey Shyamji for his wonderful contribution in the panel session. Mr. Karan Singh, Director, Rattan Organics Food. A big round of applause for Karanji for his wonderful contribution in the panel session. Mr. Vishal Rastogi, Director, Happy Nature. A big round of applause to Vishalji for his wonderful contribution to the panel session. Mr. Navneet Mehta, Global Quality Director, Food and Refreshment, Unilever. A big round of applause for Navneet for his wonderful contribution in the panel session. And the honorable moderator of the panel session, Mr. Dharmendera Bhalla, Chief Executive Officer of Govind Milk and Milk Products. A big round of applause for Dharmender ji for wonderfully moderating this panel session. Honorable panel members, I would request you if you could please come forward for a group photograph, and Arvind ji, if you could also join them. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the CXO panel, the next generation.